Quay, forgive me, Reverend Ed. Forgive me, Church Without Walls. I try not to put you guys in the public on this one, but I'm going to be putting you guys in the public on this one. We talk. We have our private chats. We have our private ruminations. What we feel, what we think, what's going on. We try to get out what we're observing at this point, and what's terrifying the living crap out of us in the world of events was these popular politicians and everybody else, these spokespeople of different religious faith, organizations, mentality. We're all dealing with these sound boxes left and right that sometimes we're having a hard time trying to deal with it. And this is insane. But, this is life. This is life right now as it is. If we had mass communication decades ago, not decades ago, but centuries ago, if we actually developed that kind of technology, imagine our social media being that active a few centuries back if we actually had something about England going after Spain, who's going after England, going after France, who's going after both Spain and England, or another country at this point, or Portugal, or Spain trying to be more dominant. If we had social media back then, if we actually had the smartphones, if we actually had the communications, things have been weird. We don't have it back then. We have right now, as it is. I won't put the CNN right now. I need records.
The Strait of Hormuz after the U.S. and Iran failed to come to terms in a peace deal. In an interview today, the president acknowledged that the move could keep oil and gas prices in the U.S. high and could push them even higher in the coming months.
So do you believe the price of oil and gas will be lower before the midterm elections?
Fox News.
I hope so. I think so. It could be or the same, or maybe a little bit higher, but it should be around the same. I think this won't be that much longer. They're wiped out.
President Trump predicts the U.S. military blockade of the Strait of Hormuz will force Iran back to the negotiating table. Let's continue this conversation now with us is Helima Croft. She is a member of the Council on Foreign Relations and global head of commodity strategy for RBC Capital Markets. Great to see you, Helima. So we just heard the president say oil and gas prices could remain about the same or even go higher, and potentially through the midterm elections in October. Where do you see things potentially going?
We could definitely go higher, especially if President Trump backs his blockade threat with actual gunboats, because we already have at this point a significant supply disruption. Very few ships are moving through the Strait of Hormuz. There had been some anticipation after the ceasefire. Talks were announced that we would get some type of settlement that would lead to an opening of the straits. But again, there's no indication that we are bridging the gap between what Tehran wants and what Washington wants. So U.S. consumers should expect to pay more for gasoline as we head into summer driving season.
Oh my goodness. And so, with the president declaring, possibly the U.S. would, blockade or, have this blockade of the Strait of Hormuz, do you see that as conceivable?
We have significant military assets already in the region. The real issue is if we try to stop the ships that are going to China, to India, that are carrying Iranian cargo, what will the Iranians do in return? Will they up their attacks on regional energy facilities? Will we see really important pipelines like the East-West pipeline in Saudi Arabia that's been used to move about 5 million barrels of exports to the Red Sea away from the Strait of Hormuz? Will the Iranians and their allies, like the Houthis, militias in Iraq, start aggressively targeting that type of infrastructure? So the Iranians still have the capacity through their proxies, through their drones, through their short-range missiles to disrupt regional energy flows. So we are watching whether this combination is moving up the escalation ladder.
And when we look at, many of these kind of Google Map imaging, and you see the collection of ships, whether it be, in the Persian Gulf or in the Gulf of Oman, you see an accumulation. You don't necessarily see a passing through the Strait of Hormuz. what happens with those vessels? How long can they just kind of linger in the area? Because obviously it's very expensive for them to get there in the first place.
Right. It's very expensive. We have crews that are sitting on these ships that are running out of clean water and food, and so there is a real imperative to try to get these ships moving. The problem for energy markets is that many of these countries in the region actually shut down their fields. They ran out of storage. So the longer this goes on, the longer it's going to be to get those fields up and running.
How long would it take, to clear this kind of backlog if at some point there is an opening, a reopening of the strait?
That's such a great question, because first you have to move the ships that are basically in this parking lot through the strait. You need to get empty container ships to the actual suppliers and start basically moving through the storage situation. So it's really interesting that the head of Kuwait Petroleum Corporation just a few weeks ago said it's going to take 3 to 4 months to get all of Kuwaiti production back online. And we would expect a similar type of situation for the rest of the producers in the region.
Wow, we're getting further and further deeper into the calendar based on all the scenarios that you're kind of giving. So, while the U.S. said, talks were deadlocked, largely over the future of Iran's nuclear stockpile, do you see Iran giving up any ground over that in order to get a peace deal going?
I mean, this is such a challenging issue because the Iranians have been steadfast in their insistence that they will not abandon enrichment of uranium. They've said they'll negotiate about the type of levels of enrichment. They will negotiate about what to do with the stockpile, but they are going to continue to enrich. And the U.S. is taking the position that there can be zero enrichment. There's also dispute over the missile program. And so unless we see one side giving ground, we're going to remain deadlocked, and the strait will remain largely shut.
Oh my. All right, Halima Croft, great to have you. Thank you so much.
Thank you.
All right, still to come. New York City Mayor Zohran Mamdani marks a milestone today.
Okay, well, why he's marking a milestone? Okay, I got a question for you, Ed. You're a sailor. If you're sailing even a small boat, I consider you a sailor. There's only so much supplies that you can load on a ship. And depending on where you're going to be sailing the ship, and you have to be wary of the environmental, well, not as we're talking about pollution, but we're talking about are the waves, are the winds, is the atmosphere all cooperating to where you're not going to be running into a major situation where you're going to be stranded for days on end. If I was to look at Google Maps right now, I'll just go over to Google Maps right now. Assuming, of course, my computer will cooperate with me. And I happen to get my map over to where you're at. I gotta type in there. I'll leave. Oh, shut up. This can be over to Halifax. So we're going to Halifax, Nova Scotia. Okay, so now it's asking me specifically what you're looking for. I am going to Halifax. Okay, so somewhere in the neighborhood that you're living in, you probably have access to a boat, and you have many harbors to sell your little boat from. You can either sail it up into your little lake, but that's not where you want to go. You'd probably want to go into the major water. And if you do, maybe sail around McNabb's Island or Devil's Island. If you really wanted to go out, you would have to deal with the environment of King Neptune's realm up the coast. And if you're somewhat of a seasoned sailor, as I think you are, you would be careful to keep that boat within sight of land all the time. Maybe within a mile or less off coast. While keeping track of the major commercials that are sailing in the waters and private vessels and military vessels. But if there's enough for you to maneuver, fine. But you still have to deal with the wind and the waves in the atmosphere. And here's the thing. Let's just say that you get blown off course. Let's just say that you get blown off course. If you were seasoned, there's their strip. A little bit of an atoll. There's an atoll. Miles on the northeast vector. I don't know what you guys call it, but I look like it's pretty damn deserted. No, I got sand dunes all over the damn place. But this would have very little fresh water, if any, or just pools of salty water, with no way of desalinizing it. This would be a no man's land. I would hope and pray that the Canadian Navy and the Canadian government would understand about this particular place, and maybe everybody else would say, no. What is this? Sable Island National Park Reserve. Maybe because of the animals, or it's considered a national park saved and salvaged by the Canadian government. There are sea lions that live on this place. There's nests all around the place. There's life on it. So hopefully, maybe you'd survive a little bit on here, but I would just hope that when you're on that ship of yours, that you're taking all the precautions necessary to sustain you and your daughter. There may not be any cell service. You might have to take a global sat phone. But here's the thing. It's not just getting stranded on the island, but consider the boats in the Strait of Hormuz mechanized islands. Just how much can they deal with the supplies that they've got on their vessels? Or if you want to look at it as a landmaster, land situation here. You only carry so much food and water with you, either camping, hiking, or even doing RVing. Now, if you're hiking around, that's one thing. You could try locating stuff. What happens if you're stuck and you have no way of getting supplies? Let's say that you're stranded because of wind, rain, something, and you can't get out of it for a while. You're stuck with whatever limited power, liquid storage capacity for fresh water, but then you got the gray and black water to deal with. When I'm hearing about those ships stuck in the Strait of Hormuz, I'm going to get out of Canadian territory and I'm going over to the Strait of Hormuz. I'm going over to the peninsula. to the jetty that's still sticking out. They may have a lot of ports in the areas, but hopefully that Iran doesn't blow them out of the sky. And there should have been ports out there, hopefully able, with maybe a tender or two, to resupply if necessary, or suck out. They would have no choice but to discharge Blackwater. How to get fresh water? How to boil away salt water, reconstitute it into regular water. How do you reconstitute a situation to where you have something palatable? Politically, metaphorically, and physically. You got an idea about that one? Because everyone else seems to be out. We can do the game of we shouldn't have, we shouldn't have, we shouldn't have. The question is, it's what are we going to do now? And that's what's freaking people out left and right. That's what's freaking them out. And I don't have a clue or an answer for anybody. If I did, I'd be scaring myself. That being said, I'm Aldous.